Let's face it, in our busy lives, we don't eat enough fruits and vegetables. In fact, according to the CDC, only 1 in 10 Americans are eating the recommended daily amount of fruits and vegetables each day, missing out on essential vitamins, minerals, fibers, and antioxidants. And that's where Balance in Nature comes in. Balance in Nature sources only the best produce, free from pesticides, heavy metals, and harmful bacteria. And Balance in Nature is the best fruit and vegetable product on the market. They use only fresh, whole fruits and vegetables inside each capsule. They don't use any GMOs, fillers, binding agents, or preservatives of any kind. You're getting real food, real science, real nutrition. I would never endorse a product that I don't use myself, and since using Balance in Nature, I feel more alert, I have more energy, my focus is sharper, and I feel great. Live life to the fullest and choose Balance in Nature. And guess what? P.A.S. Report listeners can get 35% off the first preferred order. Start getting the recommended daily amount of fruits and vegetables you need by using code PAS at balanceofnature.com.
Welcome to the P.A.S. Report Weekly Roundup Podcast. The P.A.S. Report provides an honest analysis on the critical issues that matter to you without the biased media filters. Here's your host, Professor Nicholas Giordano.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the P.A.S. Report Podcast. This is your host, Nick Giordano. Hope you're having a great day. I have a very important topic because I want to discuss something that goes to the core of our lives, our families, our society as a whole. It's something that can make or break our nation. It's something that our survival, frankly, depends on, but yet it gets ignored. And it's a simple thing. One that's a natural part of any society. It's a thing called standards. A functional nation state establishes values and standards throughout society. However, over the last few years, we've witnessed this push to lower standards in the name of improving access and equity. It's quite insane when you think about it. It's mind-boggling and bizarre. When we lower standards, we are saying that we as Americans are not capable human beings, and therefore the bar has to be lowered so that you could achieve success and accomplishment. But when we are lowering standards, are you achieving anything? I mean, just some common sense to think about. You're not really achieving anything. You're not succeeding. It's simply the easy way out, and that's part of the problem. Even more insulting is how those calling for lowering standards typically do so through a racial lens. I mean, this is insane. Think about what they're saying, that the color of your skin determines how capable you are, that the color of your skin determines your destiny, your success or failure, not you or your life choices, not personal responsibility. How horrible is that? How insulting is that? I mean, if we're going to talk about racism, that sounds pretty racist to me. And yet they get away with it. Understand that the calls for lowering standards, we're seeing it bleed into all aspects of daily life. There's no such thing as perfection anymore. Now it's about doing the bare minimum and a half-assed job, just enough to get by. It's crazy to me. It used to be that no matter what someone did as a trade, they wanted to master their craft. Now everything is rushed, in and out, as long as the imperfections aren't too noticeable, even though they are noticeable. It doesn't matter what industry we talk about. We can talk about any industry. Standards are being lowered across the board. Nowhere is this clearer than in academia. Just take a listen to these loons taking an oath upon entry into the University of Minnesota Medical School program.
With gratitude, we, the students of the University of Minnesota Twin Cities Medical School class of 2026, stand here today among our friends, families, peers, mentors, and communities who have supported us in reaching this milestone. Our institution is located on Dakota land. Today, many Indigenous people throughout the state, including Dakota and Ojibwe, call the Twin Cities home. We also recognize this acknowledgement is not enough. We commit to uprooting the legacy and perpetuation of structural violence deeply embedded within the healthcare system. We recognize inequities built by past and present traumas rooted in white supremacy, colonialism, the gender binary, ableism, and all forms of oppression. As we enter this profession with opportunity for growth, we commit to promoting a culture of anti-racism, listening and amplifying voices for positive change. We pledge to honor all Indigenous ways of healing that have been historically marginalized by Western medicine. Knowing that health is intimately connected to our environment, we commit to healing our planet and communities. We vow to embrace our role as community members and strive to embody cultural humility. We promise to continue restoring trust in the medical system and fulfilling our responsibilities as educators and advocates. We commit to collaborating with social, political, and additional systems to advance health equity. We will learn from the scientific innovations made before us and pledge to advance and share this knowledge with peers and neighbors. We recognize the importance of being in community with and advocating for those we serve.
It's crazy, right? I mean, that sounds more like a cult to me, not a group of deep thinkers looking to advance medicine in the 21st century. I have no problem where they talk about the healing methods of indigenous communities, because I think too often we push these powerful drugs and treatments that could poison the body while overlooking natural healing remedies. However, what I do have a problem with is this idiot and the idiots that are reciting this oath mentioning structural violence, white supremacy, and colonialism in the healthcare system. I mean, it's completely ridiculous. And if that's the way they really think, maybe they shouldn't become doctors. Maybe they should become social justice majors. Who knows? I want these students to be trained in the practice of medicine, not critical race theory. Would you rather have a doctor that can competently work on your heart or a doctor that's trained in proper pronoun usage? It's so ridiculous. It's so crazy to see. And yet here we are. Lowering standards is nothing more than promoting failure. And given where we are as a country, now is not the time to advocate for lowering standards. Standards are more important now than they ever were. And that's going to be the focus of this episode. But before I get into it all, make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you find this show informative, share it with your family and friends. And I want to hear from you. Write a review on Apple Podcasts. Drop me an email, podcast@PASreport.com. I want to hear what you think. Now, for years, the education system has been dumbed down. And it surprises me that so few people want to talk about how our entire education system has collapsed. Not just on the K through 12 level, but in the higher education level as well. Not just in our urban centers, but in the suburban and rural communities as well. You know, the urban centers, I mean, if you take the city areas and you look at them that have been under strict Democrat control, and those schools are really in the hands of the American Federation Teachers Union. And you look at Randy Weingartner, who's currently, or maybe she's back by now, but she was currently in the Ukraine. Don't ask why. It makes no sense to me. But when you look at academia, she's not even a teacher. She never was a teacher. She was actually a lawyer. She taught in a classroom for 6 months when they wanted to appoint her president just so she could say she has teaching experience. She doesn't know a damn classroom, though. So we're seeing all these failures across the board. And you speak to any professor at any school that's been there for a while, and they will tell you that the quality of work students submit has significantly declined compared to previous generations. It doesn't matter what the ideology of the professor is. It doesn't matter if the professor's far to the left, far to the right. It doesn't make a difference. All professors are witnessing the same thing. All teachers are witnessing the same thing. Students are not coming into college with the proper knowledge of the subject material. They are not meeting basic proficiency levels. The work ethic sucks. It's terrible. And since the coronavirus, it has only gotten dramatically worse. It doesn't matter the school. Nearly every institution has witnessed this same thing, from the community college level up to the private universities and the Ivy League institutions. It doesn't matter. K through 12 has been completely decimated. Very few students take initiative or have pride in their work. Many are satisfied. We have this mentality, as long as they pass the course, they're satisfied. It doesn't matter if they barely pass the course. As long as they're getting their credits and get pushed through, cycle through to the next grade, that's all that matters. Academia as a whole is a sinking ship. It's on a downward spiral, and it's all through self-inflicted wounds. That's what's so frustrating about this. The results are clear. We see the worldwide rankings. They continue to drop. And again, it's not just in K through 12. It's also in higher education as well. Just last week, you had the Times of Higher Education. It released its World University Rankings. For the 5th straight year, our universities have declined in the standings. At the same time, we are declining in the rankings. Our biggest and most dangerous competitor, Communist China, continues to gain ground. It's not doing us any good. And this should be setting off alarm bells, but sadly it's not. Instead, what are we talking about? What are they talking about? Well, they're talking about dropping standards even further, all in the name of improving access and equity. That's what you keep on hearing out there. And I recently wrote a piece, it was published on Fox News through Campus Reform, explaining that the biggest scandal in academics was lowering standards. That's the biggest scandal. One of the things that inspired me to write the piece was when New York University professor Madeline Jones was fired, all because NYU officials Listen to students who complain that the class was too hard. These poor little snowflakes. The class is too hard, and so they complained. You have the administration that listened to them, and so they didn't renew Madeline Jones's contract. This is a guy who is a tenured professor at Yale University, wrote one of the premier textbooks for organic chemistry, and his academic credentials are stellar. But when 82 out of his 350 students signed a petition stating the course was too difficult, the cowards, and that's what they are, they're cowards in the administration, decided to sack him. According to the students, quote, "A class with such a high percentage of withdrawals and low grades has failed to make students' learning and well-being a priority," end quote. Completely ridiculous. I remember when I was growing up, if I failed a class and tried using the excuse that the teacher was bad, that the class was too hard, or that everyone failed, my mother would have none of that. She would say she didn't care if everyone failed. She didn't care if it was a bad teacher. She didn't care if the course was too hard. She made it clear that it was my responsibility and that I needed to figure it out. In life, you're going to have bad teachers just like you're going to have bad bosses. Sometimes you don't get to pick and choose. It's not the way the real world works, and you just have to get the job done. That's how the real world works. And if you can't adapt and be flexible, that's on you. You suck it up and you deal with it. But we have created an entire generation of fragile youth that doesn't know how to deal with anything. They're good at complaining, but they're not so good at problem solving and overcoming obstacles. Rather than let them fail and learn from that failure, because that's what true success is, right? You fail something and you keep on trying until you overcome, until you achieve, until you succeed. But instead of letting them learn from their failures, we're trying to remove the obstacles, and that doesn't serve anyone well. What are we teaching the students in the process by doing this? That if they complain loud enough, they're going to get their way? Great. What's that doing? The only thing that does is it keeps feeding this entitlement culture. You're capitulating to self-entitled, spoiled brats. Do you not see what can possibly go wrong with this? Sooner or later, reality is going to set in, and these students, these people, these types of people, they are not going to be able to survive. They're not going to be able, the cruelness that exists in the real world, because they've been pampered. And this is what happens when you capitulate to the mob. Every time you capitulate to the mob keeps growing. Sorry, but students shouldn't be the ones in charge of the classroom. We are not customer service representatives. We don't exist to placate the fragile egos that exist out there. And if a professor is too hard, that's too bad. Deal with it. It's a part of life. But what these students don't realize is that they're the ones that are actually getting screwed in the process of lowering standards. We already know proficiency levels were a disgrace pre-COVID, and they're even worse now. When we get to the actual numbers, people are horrified at what they're seeing. Before the coronavirus, only 37% of graduating high school seniors that went to college were able to read, write, and do math at the college level. Too many students don't know basic facts in science and history. They don't know anything about our founding or the founding fathers. They don't know anything about our government. They have no idea what their role is in the system. It's such a sad state of affairs. It's as if the K-12 system has given up. And when you factor in the coronavirus, it's far worse. Harvard University estimates that students are behind where they should be by anywhere between 20 and 50%. Some students are behind a full academic year. But here's the critical part. Even knowing that the majority of students are anywhere from 20 to 50% behind, even though they're behind where they should be, knowing that some students are a full academic year behind where they should be, how many students got left back? That's a sad reality, right? Because most of these students, if not all of these students, will simply cycle through to the next grade, even though every single person with 2 brain cells knows that they did not grasp the material and the core concepts they were supposed to. And we know that they're not going to be able to grasp the core concepts going forward. That's the tragedy that exists. You are setting the children up, the youth up for failure, the ones that are supposed to be the future leaders. There are no future leaders. And that's the dirty little secret. Everyone in academia knows that this is a problem and it's going to get much worse, but God forbid administrators and the bureaucrats at state education departments and the United States Department of Education, God forbid they listen to the teachers. Students are not prepared academically. Hell, they aren't even prepared socially. Yet we will continue to lower the standards and make sure that they get cycled through the system. Because that's what it's about. It's about cycling through, accomplishing nothing and cycling through. Those advocating lowering standards are cheapening our own profession. For all you teachers out there, recognize that as our standards continue to drop, our professions continue to be cheapened. And it is the responsibility of every faculty member to speak out. It doesn't matter if you're in the K through 12 system or the higher education system. It's a disaster. And there are several ways that standards are being dropped. And listen, it varies from school district to school district. It's, some are crazier than others. And as far as I am aware, there hasn't been any type of studies to determine the number of districts this craziness is taking place in. And that's what makes it so difficult to track. But we know it's happening. We do know that some schools lowering standards when it comes to grading. In certain schools, students may receive a passing test grade for answering 50% of the questions correctly. See, in my day, and the way I currently operate, because it's completely ridiculous, is that if you know only half the material, you're only going to get half the credit, right? So if you answer 50% of the questions correct on a test, well, then you got a 50. That's it. Doesn't take rocket science to figure it out. Some are advocating doing away with grades completely. They say that the grading system is entirely racist, and they want to move towards a pass-fail system. Completely unrealistic. When it comes to writing assignments, many schools are allowing students to rewrite an assignment multiple times before a grade is attached to it. The teacher continually will provide feedback over and over and over again. In some cases, they directly tell the students what they need to change, what corrections need to be made. And if the 3, 4, or 5 rewrites, finally the student will get an A. Give everyone an A. Guess what? When everyone gets an A, students don't complain, parents don't complain. Is that part of the problem? Absolutely. All of these things have contributed greatly to grade inflation. We are seeing grade inflation throughout the K through 12 system. We're seeing it in higher education. And consider the proficiency levels I said before. So if we take all the subjects combined, students have about a 25% proficiency level. And it's an indisputable fact that students lack basic proficiency by the time they get to college. So some are going to argue that proficiency levels, well, they've remained flat for like the last 40 years. They haven't really deviated until the coronavirus. While on the surface, the numbers do appear flat, you have to factor in the dropping of standards. And then the numbers not so flat anymore. You see how proficiency levels are even worse than they should be. What I mean by that is while proficiency levels in reading may not have changed all that much, maybe deviating a couple of percentage points in 30 years, the standards have changed. So have the teachers. How many of you are aware that a typical high school textbook for juniors and seniors, so 11th and 12th grade, how many of you are aware that these textbooks are written at a 7th and 8th grade level? How many of you are aware of that? Now, any normal person would think that if a textbook is for a 12th grade course, then shouldn't it be written at a 12th grade level? Otherwise, what is that student doing in a 12th grade course if they are unable to do 12th grade work? How does that make any sense? And this is why the average college freshman comes into college, the average reading at a 7th grade level. But we're supposed to pretend that everyone's an academic, right? Even the Department of Education acknowledges that only 37% of graduating high school seniors are academically prepared for college. Yet while only 37% of graduating seniors are prepared for college, 61.8% of these same seniors will go directly to college, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And that number has dropped. Pre-COVID, the number of graduating seniors going directly to college was closer to 70%. Here's another kicker for you. From the 1940s to the mid-1990s, the average college student's GPA was 2.5. From the mid-1990s to present day, the average GPA increased to 3.1. How does that make sense? If students know less than their predecessors, how are they overperforming academically? And the truth is they're not. It's a big lie. And the question is even more important when you look at the changes in student behavior during that same period. Students today read much less than ever before. According to a 2010 Kaiser Family Foundation study, students today spend an average of 38 minutes a day reading. 38 minutes on average. Compare that to the 7.5 hours they spend on entertainment media looking at the damn screens. And you see what's being prioritized. So students are reading less than ever before, yet they're overperforming their predecessors. That doesn't make any sense. And this study was from 2010, so I suspect that the numbers are even more horrific today, especially among the young. They are reading less, performing at lower standards, yet they're getting higher grades. That's what I mean by grade inflation, especially when we know that many who graduate college still are unable to develop a cohesive argument, analyze and interpret information, and they show no real improvement in the ability to think critically. But we're going to keep pretending that everything is fine, right? That's what we're going to keep pretending. Critics of mine, those that call for lowering standards, they accuse me of lying. They accuse me of misrepresenting. They say they are not asking teachers to lower their standards. They are just arguing that they want to provide support to create an equal playing field for all students to achieve success, that it's about equity. It's about understanding where students come from and giving them a break. We've all been there before. You want to get someone the perfect gift for the perfect occasion, but you have no idea what to get. Well, you don't have to rack your brain anymore. Gift baskets are perfect for any occasion, whether it's birthdays, holidays, corporate events, or a simple thank you. At designeryourselfgiftbaskets.com, you get to choose the theme and the products that go into the basket. You have a coffee lover? Try the K-Cup basket. You're looking for something special for the person that loves to barbecue? No problem. There's a basket for it. Make every basket unique to the person you're sending it to. And if you're in a rush and don't have time to customize the gift basket, it's not an issue because at DIYGB.com you can choose from hundreds of pre-arranged baskets based on the occasion, theme, or recipient. And P.A.S. Report listeners get 10% off using code P.A.S. at checkout. So go to DIYGB.com, find the perfect gift for the perfect occasion, and use coupon code P.A.S. at checkout to get 10% off your order. Visit DIYGB.com today. It's not just about lowering standards in academics. We've lowered standards when it comes to acceptable student behavior. Throughout the country, there has been a push in so many districts to do away with strict disciplinary actions against students who violate the codes of conduct. Now, why would they do this? And every teacher that's listening out there, I know you're like, hell yeah. Why would any sane person advocate to lower disciplinary actions? Equity, of course. See, the loons look at everything through the prism of race, and they say that black students are disproportionately affected by code of conduct policies. Here's the amazing part. They're not saying that the black students are being wrongly targeted and disciplined for things that they didn't do. They're openly admitting that they did these things, but since the punishments fall on them, we got to lower the standards in behavior. Again, to normal people, the color of one's skin is irrelevant. Whether it's a black student, a white student, a Hispanic student, an Asian student, it doesn't matter. They should all be treated the same punishments for the same offenses. The only thing that maybe administrators should take into consideration is whether the student has ever been in trouble before. So if they've never been in trouble, you cut them a little slack, nobody's going to argue with that, fine. It has nothing to do with color, race, ethnicity, gender, and everything to do with the student's own behavior and the choices that they knowingly choose to make. You are not helping anyone by going easy on students that violate the code of conduct of the school. You are doing a disservice to the student, the parent, the teachers, and the student body as a whole. But it's worse than that. Since the days of zero tolerance have been done away with in schools, we are witnessing increasing violence, both verbal and physical, towards teachers and administrators. The failure of schools to hold these students accountable has had a chilling effect. More importantly, as administrators take this more laissez-faire approach to discipline, teachers see that. They see the lack of support they're getting, and it begins to affect the quality of their work. Many studies suggest that violence, verbal and physical, against teachers leads to increasing sick time being used, creates disconnect between faculty, administration, and students. The fact is that administrators are showing that they don't have their teachers back, and when they fail to do it, demoralizes the entire profession. We talk about a teacher shortage, and I'll get into the teacher shortage in a minute, but we talk about this teacher shortage. Who the hell in their right mind would want to be a teacher that's routinely getting disrespected day in, day out, cursed at, even violently assaulted by 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old little kids? Who would want that? And if you say anything, if you complain about this behavior, then you're the one that becomes the problem. It's completely ridiculous. Not only have the administrators abandoned the teachers, but you have other teachers that actually promote this crap. Imagine the disharmony that creates. And I'm not saying that the disciplinary actions that were used are all that effective. They're not. You talk about in-school suspension. Okay, so now a student doesn't have to go to class. And when enough students get an in-school suspension, it's more like a party, a hangout than anything else. Then you have the idea of out-of-school suspension. Another joke. That's like a vacation for a student. So the kids get to stay home all day while probably their parent or a parent is working. They play on video games, scroll through their social media, look at their screens. Wow, that's some punishment. See, if it were up to me, the disciplinary action should be something that's either going to benefit the school, the community as a whole, or the punishment is going to be so harsh, so bad that the student will never want to misbehave again. See, in my orbit, if a student violates the code of conduct, now I can't do this because I'm not allowed to, but if it was up to me, if you violate the code of conduct, fine. Here's a toothbrush. And now you have to go scrub every one of the toilets in the school. Or you have to scrub every single tile in the hallway with this toothbrush until it is sparkling clean. Give them a scissor and make them cut grass outside. Things of that nature. You'd be surprised at how it may have an immediate impact on student behavior. And guess what? How it starts to make the student take ownership of what they did. But God forbid we institute personal responsibility and integrity into our disciplinary actions. Some poor snowflakes, they may get offended. How dare you make them clean toilets with a toothbrush? How dare, that's cruel. No, it's not cruel. What's cruel is when a student slaps a teacher. That's cruel. What's cruel is when a student is misbehaving in the classroom and tells the teacher to F off. That's cruel. And it does everyone no good. You would be creating a far more functioning human being who will add value to society if you do what I say they should do, rather than these students becoming a blight on society. And now I want to get to this idea of a teacher exodus, right? We've been hearing so much about creating a teacher shortage throughout the country, that there's this massive exodus. The exodus is a myth. While the data isn't great, Brown University did a study and they found that while a slight increase in teacher turnover is a possibility, they did not find any evidence to validate a widespread teacher exodus. That's not to say teachers aren't leaving the profession. Many are. Many are looking to retire as soon as they are eligible. Some are leaving sooner than that. Combine that with the fact that the number of college students studying to become teachers is now less than half of what it was 50 years ago, and you have a recipe to create this actual teacher shortage. And this raises two important questions. The first question, why are teachers so eager to leave the profession? That's pretty important. And the second question is, why are so few younger people looking to get into the profession? Those are two important questions. Now you have these advocates that say, oh, well, teachers are leaving the profession due to low pay. That's a bunch of nonsense. First of all, pay is based on state and district level. Some districts don't pay well. Other districts actually pay very well. And I will always advocate for teachers to get paid more. But they're not leaving because of money. I want to make that clear. Teachers also get a lot of perks. Let's be honest here. You know, a lot of teachers, they don't like to admit it. But let's be honest. The hours are great. You get weekends off, holidays off, Christmas break, winter break, spring break, summers off, and you get good benefits. Now, those that got into the profession simply for the perks, they did it for the wrong reasons. These people got into the profession for themselves as opposed to the students. And when a teacher is teaching for the wrong reasons, they're going to fail. And the education system's going to fail. And the students are going to suffer. It harms the students because the teacher won't be effective. Also, teachers that got into the profession thinking it's about imparting their ideology to the students are harming them as well. It's about indoctrination. These are not educators. Any teacher that has any self-respect would never force their students to believe the way they do on issues. These are not educators. They are ideologues. They are not effective in the classroom and contribute greatly to the dumbing down of the student body. The purpose of a teacher is to get students to think, to expand their knowledge and actually think. Doesn't matter what their political positions are. No one goes into teaching to become rich or to brainwash students. Real teachers go into the profession because they have a love of education and a dedication to the students. And I've heard from a lot of teachers throughout the country. And if you're a teacher out there, shoot me an email, podcast.P.A.S. report. I want to hear from you. But I hear from a lot of teachers, and I rarely hear that they want to leave because of the money. One of the number one reasons many teachers want to leave the profession is because of the politicization of the classroom. They are tired of bureaucrats, most of whom never taught in a classroom, like Randy Weingartner, being the ones to dictate policies and curriculums. When we are talking about lowering standards, part of the reason our education system has collapsed is that bureaucrats are pushing ideology into the curriculums. And while college professors, we have a lot of leeway in how we teach our classes, the K through 12 system is much different. They don't have as nearly as much flexibility. There are so many people that think that all teachers are far left radicals, but that isn't true. Most teachers are actually middle of the road. And there are even quite a few that are conservative. They want to focus on the subject material, not get involved with the political nonsense. And just to give you one example, over 4,500 schools adopted materials to push the 1619 projects in their curriculums, even though the 1619 project has been thoroughly debunked by both liberal and conservative historians and scholars. Now, as a history teacher, imagine being forced to push something that you know is a lie. How demoralizing is that? Think about it this way. The entire education system has collapsed, and what is the debate taking place within the education system? The raging debate shouldn't be a debate at all. We shouldn't even be having a conversation, even considering teaching sexuality to children. Students can't read or write. They don't know basic facts. Yet these people want to push sexuality inside and outside the classroom. It's completely ridiculous. How's about when they know their facts? How's about when they know how to read or write? Maybe then we could inject it into the classroom. Until then, leave that crap outside. You see school-sponsored drag shows for little kids. It's disgusting. I mean, I have 2 sons. Both of them are young. Imagine I hosted an event with strippers. I called it a learning environment. They're going to learn human anatomy, and they're going to learn money management. Now, the strippers won't get fully nude. They'll wear their bikinis. They'll stay in the bikinis. They're going to be dancing and gyrating and twerking. Think of the outrage. Think of the outrage that would happen. Think of how quickly I would be canceled. Now, I would never do that because I'm a responsible human being. I'm a normal human being. But somehow we're supposed to pretend that grown men wearing little bikinis and rubbing up against kids is okay? That's no. Are you friggin' kidding me? It's horrific. So if you're in one of these districts that promotes these things, of course, you're going to begin to feel disaffected, and teachers are going to want to leave when they see that stuff. Factor that in with the worsening behavioral problems of students, especially post-COVID, and it's a toxic mix. As teachers, we've been witnessing a major change in social and behavioral issues with students for over a decade. The problem has grown worse and worse with technology. As a teacher, why should I have to compete with smartphones for my students' attentions? We should be able to take these smartphones and smash them with hammers if they use them in the classroom. We can't do that because we'll be arrested. But think about how disrespectful that is. If you're a student and you're sitting there and you're giving me your opinion, your thoughts, you're trying to analyze something, and in the middle of what you're saying to me, I pull out my smartphone and look at it, think about how you would feel, how rude and disrespectful you would say it is. Well, the same thing holds true when you do it to the teachers. And of course, if any teacher tells their students they can't bring the phone to the class, the parents and administrators, they raise holy hell. You have parents calling immediately, oh, they need their phones. We lived long enough without phones, right? Remember the days we used to have to walk around with quarters? There was a payphone? No, but now they need phones in the classroom. Completely insane. Then you have students that openly disrespect the teacher. Students hitting teachers. Students fighting in the middle of the classroom. And what does everyone do? Rather than stop the insanity, they take out their phones, hit the record button. It's out of control. And for God's sakes, you want to know how bad it is? You had a TikTok challenge out there. It was called Slap a Teacher. Slap a Teacher. Probably never heard of it because, God forbid, our media reports on things like that. So when you have TikTok challenges saying slap a teacher and teachers are getting slapped, it's no wonder you have some who want to leave the profession. It's obvious why they're having trouble getting new teachers. Who the hell wants to be in that environment? These types of issues have metastasized over the last 2 years. And you have dictatorial edicts that destroyed an entire generation of youth. As a direct result of these policies, students are way behind developmentally. The trend's going to continue. We are seeing lower scores on cognitive tests. Younger students, they have smaller vocabularies. They don't know how to socially interact with each other. So many speech issues, depression, anxiety skyrocketed. Throughout all this, teachers are told to march forward and continue cycling students through the system. They're told that they need to understand that the students are going through a difficult time in their lives, and so just push them through, that we have to be more mindful of the households they may be coming from. Sorry, but no, we don't. Teachers aren't trained to be psychologists. They never signed up to become behavioral specialists. And the fact that so many want to excuse the behavior and cover it up is unacceptable. You have parents, administrators, students who think they shouldn't have to turn in homework, that they should get unending extensions when it comes to their work, that every test should be open book. You want to talk about lowering standards? There you go. It's the everyone gets an A mentality. If everyone gets an A, no one complains, and that's the path towards social destruction. Not only are they lowering standards for students, but due to the number of open positions, some want to lower the standards on teacher credentialing. If we move forward with this, it'll only make the problem worse. You have legislation dropping the college requirement for teachers. It's short-sighted. And it would only worsen student proficiency levels, which are already at historic lows. Arizona passed a law stating that a student currently enrolled in college should be able to teach in a classroom. No, they shouldn't. The hell's wrong with you? Part of the problem is that we have too many teachers who are no longer experts in the subject material that did go to college. And as a teacher, not only is the subject material important, but classroom management is important as well, particularly for students in their younger years. Teaching is a craft. It takes years to hone one's skills, and the college requirement is essential to understanding the basic foundations of education and pedagogy. This is not to say that teacher credentials should not be reformed. I don't believe a master's degree in education is of any value whatsoever. Rather, teachers should be experts in their field. All master's degrees should be focused on subject material. We already have a new generation of teachers who weren't trained properly in their subject material, and they substitute the material that they don't know with their own ideology. That's a disaster. Teachers need to have command over the material through the vast knowledge they acquired in the subject field. I'm not opposed to a temporary measure where professional experience can be substituted for college degrees. When someone could bring 20, 30, 40 years of real-world experience into the classroom, it can be enriching to the student body. But this is by no means a permanent solution. The big part of the problem with teachers, particularly college professors, is that they are clueless about the real world. They got their undergraduate degrees, they went on to grad school, got masters, PhDs, whatever, and then they go right into the classroom without any real-world experience. They operate in the world of theory, and theory is very different from reality. I believe that we should require real-world experience for teaching. I believe we should pay teachers more, and at the same time make it much more difficult to become a teacher. That will weed out a lot of the bad ones. We have to do something. When you're lowering standards in academia, you're lowering standards in all professions. Are you really going to be comfortable visiting a doctor when you know the standards have been dropped? Are you going to be comfortable with a lawyer? Would you rather get on a flight with the best pilots, or would you rather get on a plane knowing that the pilot standards have dropped? Not for nothing. But when we look back at one of the greatest generations, the World War II generation, there's a reason they get labeled that. It was a generation that understood what they were fighting for. It's a generation that believed in American power and influence. It was a generation that understood what sacrifice meant. One of the more interesting aspects is that when you look at high school graduation rates, it's not even comparable to it. Throughout the 40s, 50s, 60s, the graduation rates were between 40 and 70% going higher with each year. It didn't matter whether they graduated or not. Many still thrived and exceeded. You had a lot of people dropping out of school, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th grade. But those that didn't graduate from high school, they had street smarts, common sense, survival skills, grit, determination. They were brilliant thinkers like Milton Friedman, brilliant generals like MacArthur, Patton, Eisenhower, presidents like Eisenhower, JFK. Today, high school graduation rates are over 90%, but as I stated, we're not educating students. Instead, we are simply cycling them through. Even worse, not only aren't they getting a great academic education, but many lack common sense. They lack street smarts. They lack grit and determination. And they're going to have a real difficult time in the real world. The idea of lowering standards is insulting to every single American, and we see the results every day. Just look at General Milley. That's the result of lowering standards. We're plenty capable of meeting challenges and overcoming obstacles. Keep the standards high and encourage students to meet those standards. That's what will allow us to reverse these horrible trends. Now, I hope you found the content of this episode informative. If you did, don't forget to give the P.A.S. Report a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. Take 30 seconds to write a review. I want to thank you for joining me, and I'll be back on Monday with another great episode of the P.A.S. Report Podcast.
Thank you for listening to the P.A.S. Report Weekly Roundup Podcast.
Have a good one. Bye.
Be sure to rate, share, and subscribe to the podcast so you'll never miss an episode. Also, visit PASreport.com and follow us on Twitter at PAS Report.